Good evening, everyone. Would you like to start with some warm-up exercises? Please be seated. Thank you. Brenda? Screen, does it come on? I don't know, it's normally on. So we're just technical problems, more technical problems. Yeah, it's not showing. The orange light's on, but... We'll just start. I think we'll just start. My screen's not working, but I'm sure we can get by for now. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second council meeting of this year. Unfortunately, as you're all aware, it's absolutely freezing, so if we get the business done quickly, we've got a full agenda, then it means everybody can get home and get snuggly. Right, agenda item number 1, apologies.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've had apologies from Councillors Ali, Barnes, Cairns, Cott, Cummings, Donaldson, Durrant, Gallagher, Hall, Hindmarsh, Laverick, Mafemba, Phillipson, Habib Rahman, Shumel Rahman, Hazel Stevenson, John Paul Stevenson, Webster, Margaret Wood and Stevie Wood.
Thank you. Did they come in after the email about the heating? Thank you. Agenda item number 2, the minutes of the previous meeting. Does Council agree the minutes held on the 11th of January? Yes? Oh, Councillor Taylor? Thank you. Agenda item number 3, official announcements. I am pleased to announce that Georgina Nolan has today taken office as the new Senior Coroner for Newcastle. I am sure we all wish her well in that role and also pass on our thanks to the former Senior Coroner, Karen Dilks, who has now stepped down after 11 years of service. The next announcement, I would like to congratulate Councillor Colin Ferguson, taking over the leadership of the Liberal Democrat group. Well done, Colin. And thank you to and I would have said thank you to Councillor Cott, but he's not here, so never mind. I'd also like to congratulate Newcastle United, reaching Wembley, and that definitely deserves a round of applause. And I've just been informed that it is tradition that the Lord Mayor attends. Thank you, David, for that information. I have received a request from the Liberal Democrats to ask an urgent question about the ongoing performance issues in the North East Ambulance Service, and I have agreed to allow this request to be considered at item 10 on the agenda. Agenda item number 4, correspondence. We have no correspondence. Is that because of postal strikes, do you think? Or nobody loves us. Agenda item number 5, petitions. One petition has been received this month. I call upon Councillor Gray to present the petition.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The following petition is about the removal of bus route in my ward. To keep the M6 running, we, the undersigned, are disappointed at Nexus's proposed removal of the M6 bus route and ask that they commit to protecting this vital service. The M6 bus is a lifeline for many residents of South Jesmond Ward, in particular the residents of Vale House, who rely on the service to access shops and services in the city centre, attend appointments at the Royal Victorian Infirmary, get to work and to visit friends and family. Removing this service would be damaging to the independent social and family lives and ability to access medical appointments for many. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. I now call upon Councillor Byrne to respond.
Thank you for bringing this petition, which highlights the vital role that public transport plays in people's lives. I will raise the petition with Nexus and discuss how we can work with them to make this a viable service for residents in your ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Lord Mayor, I probably should have said there's 99 written signatures, 36 online, bringing a total of 135. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Agenda item number 6, public question time. No questions were accepted for the agenda. Agenda item number 7. We have a presentation by the Director of Public Health, Interim Director. I'll now call upon, I'll invite the Interim Director of Public Health, Lorna Smith, to address Council. Members will ask questions following the presentation and may I ask that all replies be given together at the end? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So thank you for having me today. I'm Lorna Smith. I am the Interim Director of Public Health. I hope that you will have received my report, the annual report for 2022, When I Grow Up and When I Grow Old. I have written it with great ambition and a lot of affection for Newcastle and our residents and the lives that they lead, and focused on inequalities and social determinants of health because of the persistent social patterning in our health and health outcomes across our residents. The key focus about growing up and growing older is around giving people the best start in life, and the life circumstances in which we live determines our healthy life expectancy, which is a key indicator for us in Newcastle, that it's not just about how long you live, it's how well you live. And that's really important to us, that people are free from disability and pain and the hardship of poor health. So using a public health approach informed by evidence, with data and with community voice, I've tried to set out some of our key priorities, as well as some of the key strengths and unique assets we have in Newcastle, and there is many of them, and hopefully we can reflect on the report and elements of that in the strengths of our population. I've developed some infographics and tools for people to engage with the data, because I'm conscious of, I don't want Newcastle to be a list of data that makes us look bad or good. We're much more than just data points, actually. It's about the people of Newcastle. And so what I've set out in my report is using data around health, as well as the things that influence health, to then talk about not just the average of people of Newcastle compared to England, but the variation within that. And as people will have seen from the report, it's the variation and the difference that we really want to focus on, because of the unjust and preventable differences people experience. Particular to that is that the health service alone is not the solution in health, and I've very much set out around the multidisciplinary whole system approach we need to address health and public health priorities. And I particularly wanted to highlight the infographic of imagining Newcastle just being a village of 100 people. I wanted to do this because I think when we talk about data, and we all saw it through COVID, big numbers, it's hard to humanise that and know what that means. But actually, if you know somebody who's been poorly or got a disease or who's suffering, It's much easier to have insight into what that does to the context of their whole lives and offer empathy for who they are. So if we were just a village of 100 people, I'm sure we would all know the 2 children that didn't have breakfast and went to school with an empty tummy, and would probably find a way to protect and help them, just as much as we would understand almost a fifth of our residents are in fuel poverty, which isn't just about heating your home, but is about having hot water to wash and being able to clean your clothes and prepare food. Because we'd know somebody, it brings it to life. I also wanted to talk about the community voice throughout the report, so we've used quotes and feedback from our residents, because what we've seen is, again, they're the best people to interpret our data and understand it in the context of their lives. There is great risk in making assumptions or judgments around what information we do have, as well as asking questions about what we don't have. So I've presented an inequalities framework I've developed for shared understanding of the different kinds of inequality from a social, health and healthcare lens, recognising that while these came to the forefront in COVID and there's great momentum around action of inequalities, it's understanding the nuance and subtlety of them and the complexity of them that requires different approaches from different disciplines and professions, far beyond just the healthcare system, as I've said. Poverty is central to public health action, but I felt it was appropriate to mention cost of living without going into detail, because it almost needs a report in itself. But I did want to particularly set out, in terms of the cost of living agenda at the moment, what's central to a public health approach is that it is free from stigma and judgment and assumption. It's really hard to ask for help, as members will know. And what we've seen is that stigma and shame are the biggest barrier to people getting support that they need and actually addressing some of the opportunities we have to help them. I've also set that out in terms of some specific examples. So food insecurity, it's one of the biggest problems we have in the city, and it is far from just a bag of ingredients. It is so important to emotional well-being, your sense of nurture, as well as your physical health. I've also focused on healthcare inequalities specifically, and I think this is where we've got to really support our health system colleagues who are absolutely facing extreme acute pressures, largely with a lot of preventable or certainly treatable conditions that we could have intervened early through wider determinants of health approaches. And that is about taking action on a whole system approach. There's lots of health improvement opportunities, lots of secondary prevention opportunities, and lots of opportunities to make sure that underserved communities are being reached by services and that they're designed from a resident's perspective and not from a single service or organisational perspective. This offers huge opportunities to reduce the acute pressures we're seeing at the moment and improve clinical and cost effectiveness of our health service. We've got some of the best in the world, so we want to make sure they're focused on where the greatest need is. In order to prioritise our work, I've set out the 5 key biggest causes of chronic disease, as well as the 5 key causes of premature death. The analysis of these shows some very clear key messages. They're all socially patterned by poverty. They are all preventable by a very strong evidence base of areas for action, and they are all attributed to food, physical activity, tobacco, and alcohol. And they are all treated and outcomes are improved through those same 4 areas. It's about tailoring and targeting those interventions that are timely and appropriate for the population. So while it does feel challenging that those 5 things for both chronic diseases and premature death are preventable, it's also a huge opportunity for us to make a difference at really large scale. And I think that's my challenge to us to work together and achieve. I also wanted to set out for anyone who does have chronic disease or are short in life, it's not just about your health, and I think that's, again, taking a holistic approach and ensuring there is a public health perspective throughout, that your health is also about your happiness, is about your confidence, is about your inclusion, is about your ability to work, and it also massively impacts your friends and family, and that's a really important part of when we talk about health data. Everyone will know someone isn't just a disease or just a statistic. So in order to demonstrate that and focus those key areas, I've set out 6 priority areas that demonstrate the relationship between the determinants of health, the lives that we lead, and how they shape and influence our behaviours, and how they lead to the health outcomes that we see in Newcastle. I have presented evidence around these areas, as well as provided some evidence of good practice and things we are doing and achievements we are making, but also offered areas where we could focus. These include in terms of the determinants of health, employment and work, childhood, in terms of key behaviours, smoking and alcohol, and in terms of conditions or health outcomes, diabetes and depression. Finally, I have set 4 strategic, very high-level recommendations around joint planning and evaluation of the wider determinants of health. I think there's a huge opportunity for us to actually recognise the existing contribution of housing, of transport, of work to health and health outcomes, as well as improve how we work together to make sure we are taking an approach to inequalities and health outcomes throughout. The Council's already incredibly ambitious around how we use data and integrate data from public health analysis perspective, and I think there is lots of opportunity for us to do that. So again, we're matching social characteristics with health outcomes and viewing it in the context of people's lives, using our community champions and residents' voice within that. One clear priority for us is our food health system. We do have extreme pressure on our local food system, food poverty and the quality of food and the rates of adult and childhood obesity. And matched to that is our physical activity promotion, which is universally good for physical and mental health, treatment and care, as well as prevention. And lastly, supporting our health system colleagues with healthcare inequalities and really focusing their skills and expertise on improving the quality of health services targeted to those most who need it. So that's a summary of the report.
Thank you, Ms Smith. We will now have questions from members. Now we have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. And I have more names down who want to speak. So if you can be clear and short with your questions, then we can get them all done. I'm going to start with Councillor Kilgour, followed by Councillor Taylor, followed by Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Lorna, for an excellent report. I know Eugene left big shoes to fill, but I think we can safely say you've achieved that and some. Your report contains some quite stark data, so I really welcome the focus on the wider social determinants of poor health and the link between poor health and poverty. The current cost of living crisis may well tip even more of our residents into poverty, and I wondered if you could say a little more about what we're doing to prevent that from a public health perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is it okay if I... Yeah.
Well, it's easier if you do them all at once, I think.
Yeah,
is that okay?
Yeah,
Thank you. Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Lorna. I think it was a very insightful, comprehensive and clear report, and it's really great to get back to the wide range of public health responsibilities rather than having to concentrate on the pandemic, and particularly your concentration on the social determinants of health. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but there's also some very worrying statistics. The suicide rate, the drug-related deaths, the alcohol-related admissions, the fact that 2/3 of our residents or adults are overweight or obese, and the low healthy life expectancy. And I wondered what you felt the most important action you could do to have some influence on those would be. And just another couple of very quick questions. COVID, we're hoping it's going away, but there has been some worrying information about a new variant. I wondered if you could say anything about that. And finally, when we're trying to ask pharmacists to do so much more to try and reduce the pressure on GP surgeries and A&E, it's very worrying to hear that so many pharmacies are going to be coming out of our supermarkets, etc., particularly Lloyd's in my area. Is there anything we can do to support pharmacies better?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Mitchell?
I'd just like to say thank you for an informative report. It was really interesting. But a number of years ago, concerns were expressed about alcohol pops being the gateway for young people into heavy alcohol drinking. And it seems to me that vapes have become the gateway into smoking and worse. Increasing numbers of young people are vaping openly on their way to school, and large numbers of young people have no difficulty in acquiring them and possibly even in schools. Does the Director of Public Health agree with me that we need to be taking action, and what advice is she giving to the Council on this matter?
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Shatwell, then Councillor Campion.
Thanks so much for your report. I particularly like the front cover as well, with all of the hands. That really showed the human connection. I really like that. My question is, you briefly mentioned community champions and the residents' voice. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about how the learning from utilising community champions to improve vaccine take-up can be used in other areas of our public health work.
Councillor Campion.
Thank you very much. Like all good things, this question comes to you in three parts. Firstly, what mitigations and procedures have been put in place to deal with the ongoing closure of the Newcroft Sexual Health Clinic? Secondly, can you confirm if talks have been held with SH24, the not-for-profit that provides free sexual health services? And if none have taken place, would you please look into if a partnership is possible, especially given they already work with neighbouring authorities like South Tyneside, Gateshead, Sunderland and County Durham? And then finally, can you detail what sexual health education is conducted for young people and specifically young teenagers so they are aware of where they can get the support they need as well as any contraception or sexual testing kits needed? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne and Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And thank you for your report. The introduction of the Clean Air Zone has highlighted the role of air pollution and health. Could you tell us a little bit more about how it impacts us and what benefits cleaner air should bring? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stone. Is he? No? Councillor Avaei.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for the report. In your opinion, what is the biggest barrier in tackling health inequalities in the city? And as part of the Levelling Up agenda, is there any extra funding available to the public health team to tackle health inequalities in Newcastle? And it is appalling that the average life expectancy in Newcastle is 2 years less than the national average. And are there any lessons that we can learn from radical approaches that have taken elsewhere, for example, minimum pricing per unit of alcohol in Scotland? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hay and Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Lorna, for your report. We know that having access to employment not only reduces health inequalities for individuals and their families, but can also reduce pressure on public services. With that in mind, do you have any plans to work more closely with the Council's economic development and welfare rights teams? And if you do, can you tell us a bit more about those proposals? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashby, we can squeeze you in quickly. Well.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for the report. Back in the day, I used to advise Swan Hunter. They told me that on a Monday, after Newcastle United had won, happiness in the yard was higher and productivity was higher too. Was that just an old wives' tale, or is that any professional evidence to back that up? And therefore, can we expect a little spike in happiness and productivity for Newcastle, at least over the next few months? But less flippantly, the work that was done by volunteers to make sure that we rolled out the vaccine very, very fast was absolutely exemplary. Is there anything that can be done to harvest that spirit of community for other public health issues? And again, in asking for your professional opinion, we hear about new variants. of COVID, so in the wings, as it were. Is it likely that, as with the evolution of any kind of bug, that they are going to be more transmissible but less fatal in the nature of things, so that, as has been spoken about recently, in due course, the virus will become more like the common cold than anything else, and we'll hardly notice that we've had it?
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Ms Smith, do you think you can do it?
I wish I took more organised notes, I'm going to be honest. Okay, I'll take them in order if that's all right. So thank you for all your questions. In terms of the cost of living work, there's huge work currently underway that Public Health is supporting. So in particular, we've set up a winter wellbeing service that is signposting and largely supporting people to navigate what support is available, what's local, and kind of breaking down that stigma of asking for help. What we're seeing from that public health analysis of who's asking for need is it is mostly working people, it is people of working age. We are trying to look at the patterning of that in terms of there's generally children in the household, which is quite a different group that was asking for support during COVID, which tended to be people who lived alone, for example. So there's a lot of public health analysis going on. We've also given 550,000 to VCS organisations to support our winter wellbeing hubs, and are looking to create that as actually a sustainable network, so that actually it's not about going somewhere because you don't want to be in your house, but it's about somewhere where you can learn skills or activities or make friends and have that social connectedness. There's a huge amount of work around our food poverty infrastructure, so Public Health Commission, the Food Newcastle network, which brings together our organisations, and are trying to develop an infrastructure that builds resilience for people. So with our food pantries as a next step for people in terms of moving on from emergency parcels. And linked to that is a group we're chairing around free school meals, so that free school meals are being access is being increased to those eligible, but also the quality and nutrition of those meals is more attractive to children, and we really want to involve children in that participation. We've also got a ventilation grant scheme in place, so we've supported small and medium-sized businesses to improve energy efficiency of premises. So we've supported music venues, gyms, lots of different kind of hospitality venues, which hopefully should take some pressure off their energy bills. But I think, largely there is actually a lot of work that we need to do longer term on this. I think health literacy and people's understanding of their rights and what they're entitled to and the impacts of health is really important. We're currently getting lots of residents talking to us about mould and damp in homes, and I think links with housing and thinking about supporting people to have more ownership and control over their energy bills is really important. Linked to that, we've got a pilot in terms of stop smoking with social housing providers, because we know smoking is one of the biggest causes of poverty and stress on a family. And then there's particular work around the Healthy Start vouchers for pregnant women and young families, as well as harm reduction in terms of the risks associated with poverty, from sexual exploitation to gambling to loan sharks and things like that, with our substance misuse team. So an awful lot of work just showing the links between cost of living and poverty and the public health approach. But I think certainly moving forward, rather than a specific programme of work, we want to embed it across the council. So the next question.
Ms Smith, if you think you would rather respond in writing, that's...
I've noted them all down, it might not be in order. Is that okay? Apologies.
Okay.
In terms of the question around the community champions, I really welcome this question, because it's been such a really important group for us in the past 3 years, and built up a really established network. We've just done a review of that, and I'm pleased to say that we will be creating a permanent programme of work around that. So some permanent posts will be advertised shortly to establish that programme within the public health structure. In terms of what we've learned is not to make assumptions, to be accountable to challenging questions. It's entirely reasonable if you're asking someone to have a treatment or a vaccine or go somewhere that they ask why and that they're satisfied with your answer. So being available, I've met with them fortnightly for years and answered every question I possibly can, and if I don't know, to find it out. And know that often their interpretation of the data provides very obvious insight we would never know if we didn't ask, and that there's practical solutions often we can use. So huge opportunities for healthcare inequalities, but also for how we as a council design and deliver all services actually to make sure they're from a resident's perspective. In terms of Councillor Taylor's questions, I agree in terms of some of the data around some of the really stark differences we're seeing or poor outcomes around suicide, alcohol, obesity and healthy life expectancy. And I think obviously they are attributed to poverty and the patterning of those. And usually what we see in terms of drug-related deaths and suicide and alcohol admissions, they're all late markers of poverty that's across the city and across nationally at the moment. I think the key things we need to focus on is household income and what we can actually do at an individual and family level, because some of the broader pressures in terms of poverty are out of our control, unfortunately. But I think it's hopefully through this report, I've tried to really articulate the links are not, they're not soft links. These are really clear evidence-based links between poverty and those outcomes to do with obesity or substance misuse. And hopefully as well tried to encourage kind of empathy and compassion around those circumstances people find themselves in. Your second question to do with pharmacy and the role that they have. I know we've recently just undertaken the PNA to look at our pharmacy needs assessment and what they're offering. And we are increasingly using pharmacies to support us with community wellbeing. But I think some of the work around the champions and rolling that programme out and thinking about some of the preparedness we can do with communities around their own knowledge of health and how to access services can complement them, so they're not individual businesses, if you like, just delivering a service. They're part of a network and an approach to support how people understand and use health services more generally. In terms of vapes and vaping in young people in particular, we've recently just done the health-related behaviour questionnaire, which is of over 7,000 children and young people in Newcastle. And I think what was actually really encouraging for us is that they told us less of them were exposed to alcohol or cigarettes, and actually health and behaviours had improved across the board. But we do have limited data about vaping, and we are aware that vaping, while it is much safer than smoking, and it is really effective for groups particularly at risk like pregnant women, it is recommended as an intervention to stop smoking. It is obviously not recommended at all as something to do, and we are concerned about young people doing it. In terms of the work that's being done, there's a range of prevention approaches trying to understand why young people are vaping and what it's offering them. And currently, there isn't a lot of evidence about linking it to more dangerous behaviours. But part of the intelligence task we have is building up that surveillance and sharing practice with colleagues from across the North East and wider through our Fresh partnership. In terms of COVID, I will have to provide a written response in terms of new variants. We're currently not concerned about obviously we have rolling surveillance of that and we regularly monitor that with our UK HSA partners. There's nothing in particular that we're concerned about. And just to link that to the latter question on COVID, I think we are cautious around likening it to colds or flus because it is different groups that it impacts and there is higher risk for particular groups. The likelihood is, from a kind of natural history of disease point of view, it will become more infectious and more mild, but that's not to say that there won't be particular groups more at risk. So, for example, there's particular patterning around age or ethnicity in some groups, and I think it's just being sensitive to it may affect different people differently, and there is still people at very high risk. And of course, it's still an incredibly emotive topic for people who did lose someone who was impacted by COVID, so it's not to minimise it. In terms of the happiness question, I think I welcome that. I think from a scientific point of view, there is lots of evidence in terms of protective factors of well-being and mental health improvement, whether that's social connectedness or a sense of purpose or something to look forward to, does actually make us healthier and more productive and more generous and more considerate. And actually in the Public Health Department, we've just established permanent roles around mental health improvement. So we've supported our mental health treatment and care as part of the agenda to really look at well-being and, as I say, those protective factors. So you never know, we might have more wins at Wembley to support us. We'll add it to the list. I think in terms of action on health inequalities, so I think there's definitely learning around structural interventions like minimum unit pricing. We absolutely strongly support that. It's quite a sophisticated policy in terms of it will impact protection of children and young people in particular. So I think things like that are really where we would like to see the direction of travel from health inequalities. As set out in the report, it's about those determinants of health. The poor outcomes we see around alcohol are really a result of coping mechanisms and life circumstances earlier on. And in terms of the public health grant, it is a little bit complicated. We don't currently have our grant award for this year. It's from April, so we don't know our allocation. But over the past year, we've done significant work to look at cross-directorate funding and support that we can do across the wider determinants of health for the particular reason around the evidence for that. So there is certainly work ongoing with licensing, with operations regulatory services, and with transport colleagues, for example, where we are investing to address health inequalities through those approaches. And linked to that, the question around economic development and employment. So we currently have 4 apprentices doing a public health graduate degree, and one of them is actually an employability officer in the economic development team. And we have created a specific public health practitioner role around employment and poverty, who is working on a programme of work to not just support the Better Health at Work agenda for good work, but also support people into employment, addressing some of those barriers set out in the report.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
I don't think I covered everything.
Well, if you want to follow up with an email or something, I'm sure colleagues will be more than happy to receive it. Thank you so much. Does Council agree to receive the report? On behalf of the Council, I would like to thank you, Lorna. Thank you so much. It was very good. Agenda item number 8. Independent Remuneration Panel Annual Review of Members' Allowances 23 to 24. I will call upon Councillor David Wood to move the covering report, seconded by Councillor Gray.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I would like to start by thanking a few people, certainly Mr Eric Richards, who's sitting at the back there, who chairs the Remuneration Committee. I would hope he takes our thanks back to his other panel members, and the work he does is really appreciated, Lord Mayor. Also, I'd like to put a vote of thanks to the heating engineers for hopefully make us focus our minds and get away quicker. Lord Mayor, I mean, here we are again at the members' remuneration and all that entails. So I know there are amendments to be had, so I'd like to move the report as is, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Gray, would you like to speak? Or? Thank you. We have received an amendment to the recommendations in the report, proposed by Councillor Kemp and seconded by Councillor Kilgour.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Eric, thank you very much for all the work you do, and I can only imagine how frustrating it is that year upon year a very valid piece of work which helpfully identifies all of the anomalies and discrepancies between members' remuneration across the region and recognises the huge amount of work and public service that is committed by members across this chamber. Sadly, the reason for the amendment is not in any way weakening the validity of the report and the content. It's simply that we feel at a time of a cost of living crisis, and in particular on a day when many of us across the chamber have participated in action alongside the Trade Union Council about defending workers' rights and about the challenges people are paying, we don't feel that we can really move to the recommendations as set out, although we hope that in the amendment as set out there is an acknowledgement of those people who are struggling the hardest and the carers, etc. What I would like to do is extend a hand out to say we would like to work with you in a systematic way to actually address a longer term remuneration process which doesn't lead you and colleagues doing this year in, year out, having something more structured and long term and possibly aligned with staff payments. But at the same time, this is really something, I believe very clearly should be settled by central government, and there should be a metrics that is allocated across all of local government rather than ourselves. But thank you very much. I move the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Kilgour, would you like to reserve or speak? Formally second. Thank you. We have 4 members who wish to speak. Councillor Frew, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Morrissey and Councillor Campion. So, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't want to add much to what the leader has set out. I think he's set out what the approach should be from the administration. I'll be supporting him in that. I will thank the panel. It is heartening for the work of councillors to be recognised and set out so clearly. With cost of living crisis biting residents, council finances and the personal finances of councillors, it is difficult to make these kinds of choices for us in the chamber. And I think we generally put them in that order of priority. But at the end of the day, we need to ensure that this chamber is not exclusionary, that it is not necessary to be wealthy or well salaried to be able to commit the time to come here. We need to reflect the diversity of our city, and that includes a lot of people on low pay who may find it completely a barrier to be able to give up time from their day job and from their families to be able to come into here and do the level of work that they really need to do to represent their residents and be a part of the civic life of the city. But as I say, it is impossible for us as elected representatives to go ahead and award ourselves more money for doing the job that we do. And it really is upon, I think, DLUC to come to some kind of arrangement to create a deal with the LGA where there is a negotiated national settlement with some kind of scale that councils can agree to and apply it to their own circumstances so that we aren't in this situation year after year. I will thank councillors for their effort and sacrifice in choosing not to go with the full recommendations for this report, because it does have an impact on the council's finances. It is not enormous, it's about £46,000, but that money will be used to the best of our abilities. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Frew. Councillor Ferguson, then Councillor Morrissey.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think it's fair to say that I wouldn't want to be the chair of the Independent Remuneration Panel because a lot of work goes into assessing the circumstances of members' allowances every year, and every year we stand here and debate it and say we don't actually like the look of that, which I think is a real shame, because there's a lot of work has gone into the position that we're in, where we have a recommendation that we decide that we might not want to go with. It's fair to say that I probably share the deep unease of many about voting to kind of almost look as if we're lining our own pockets. And yet, I'm also deeply aware of the fact that if we don't seriously look at how to make an allowance for the time that people in this chamber put into the business of council, supporting their local communities, and all of the other work that goes into being public representatives, then we do risk this chamber ultimately being exclusionary and people not being able to come in here because they would look at the situation and say, well, I couldn't afford to be in here. So whilst I find myself very conflicted, it must be said, when it comes to standing here, that it is, on one hand, a small amount of money, but on the other, I think we do need to show restraint at a time when ultimately the costs would be passed on to taxpayers. I do think there needs to be some sort of national consideration of what the genuine costs of working in local government are, so that anybody who wants to do the kind of work that we do is enabled to do so. Young people or younger people like myself tend not to choose this, and that's because it's difficult to juggle it alongside all of your other commitments, and I know that very much on a personal level, and I'm fortunate that I'm able to make it work. But I do think that we need to look seriously at how we can make sure that anyone who wants to be in this chamber can actually manage to get here. I do have an unease about the ultimate recommendation of the independent remuneration panel, and I'm sorry that I do, because I recognise that a lot of work has gone into it. But ultimately, I think it's for DLUC to step up and get this issue addressed. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Morrissey, followed by Councillor Campion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, what I was going to say has been condensed, as in terms of the Liberal Democrats would not have been agreeing with money going towards play areas. That is something that should be within the budget of the council and agreed by the council in Urban Green. So we're very pleased to say that that's not going to happen. Again, I think we're all in the same position of in this time of hardship for many people, taking money that could be spent in other places would be a better thing to do. And my suggestion would be that that money could go to the West End Food Bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morrissey. Councillor Campion.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I was expecting a little bit more time there. I would have got myself ready. Thank you very much, and thank you to the Independent Remunerations Panel for the work you do. I know from my own experience how frustrating it is to put a lot of effort into something to then roundly be told thanks but no thanks. So I understand the frustration you may well face. I'd like to echo the thoughts of Councillor Ferguson and our colleagues across the chamber as well. We are in a cost of living crisis. There has never been a greater squeeze on council finances. Our residents are really struggling to put food on the table, money for the heating, and yet here we are potentially talking about giving ourselves a little bit more cash. And to me, that just sends all the wrong signals. So I'm really pleased that we are able to agree across the chamber that now is not the right time. However, I would strongly agree with Councillor Ferguson that we do need to make sure that this is something that is addressed long term. I'm sure colleagues will join me in maybe encouraging our Chief Executive to write to the Minister of DLUC and ministers across government in saying that this is something that needs to be sorted. I know the LGA do a lot of work on ensuring we get diverse councillors elected, and I think it is so incredibly important that our council chamber reflects our city. And I think everyone would agree with me, at the moment we don't do a good enough job at doing that. As a young councillor, as somebody who is only 25 years old and Whether I do feel that sometimes, even if I am young, I look around and I don't see very many other councillors my age. I don't see very many other councillors middle-aged. We are, unfortunately, a little bit pale, a little bit stale, and a little bit male, and I'm not sure that necessarily gives the best. I am surprised to hear colleagues across the chamber shouting down improving diversity in our council chamber. I'm sure that's something we can all agree with. A more representative council chamber for our beautiful, diverse city. Look, I will bring my remarks to a close, but I just want to say again, thank you for the work that's been done, and I hope we can all agree that we do need to do more to ensure that our chamber is more representative of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campion. The mover of the report, Oh, Charlie, sorry, you did reserve.
I won't go across all of the various good points that have been made. I think the one that is obviously the most pertinent is saying thank you to the work of the Independent Remuneration Panel for the work they do every year, and obviously we often come back and say no to what they've offered. I think there needs to be a national approach or a regional approach or something that doesn't put the onus on us as councillors to vote to essentially put more money into our own pockets, which is how it's often portrayed. Obviously, there does need to be more work done to get a more diverse range of councillors. On this side of the chamber, we do have more women than men, and we have done for a while now, and I'm sure we'll be more than happy to discuss the ways in which we managed to achieve that. But pay is an important issue, whether it's for councillors, council staff, or more widely across the economy, as we will cover later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Wood, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As an older male, but not quite stale, yes, I'll just put that down to youthful exuberance on the part of Councillor Campion. Can I just say, on the report, I had to look back at some of the figures. In 2010, when the years of austerity started, councillors' allowance for Newcastle City Council were £9,210. Currently, they are £9,200. So in 13 years, we've lost £10 somewhere. I don't think anybody joins the council to make money, but in saying that, the council has to be diverse to represent the area on which they are elected for. And I'll take the point about people saying on different sorts of remedies and whatnot, and I would hope that the LGA can bring something up, but if they can't, then it should be down to us to try and bring something up that we can present in this chamber that would be acceptable. Lord Mayor, as I said, I would support the amendment, and from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Does Council agree the amended recommendations? Excellent. Agenda item number 9. Proposed exemption from attendance at council meetings. Councillor Wood, to you again.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to formally move the report.
Thank you. Councillor Gray, would you like to formally second? Does Council agree to report? Does Council agree to report? Does Council agree the report? I'm trying to read it, but it's not. Does Council agree to accept the report? Thank you. Whatever it is, yeah. Agenda item number 10. Members' questions. As mentioned earlier, an urgent oral question has been agreed for inclusion on the agenda in relation to the North East Ambulance Services. As members will not be aware of the question, I will call upon Councillor Ferguson to read it out. I will then call upon Councillor XXX, whoever that is, who's going to respond. You're Councillor X, right, okay. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In the light of ongoing performance issues, whistleblower allegations about failure to maintain professional and ethical standards, reporting in the national media today about crews responding to emergencies without access to life-saving drugs, and today's publication of a damning Care Quality Commission report finding that the corporate leadership of the North East Ambulance Service is inadequate, do the Leader of the Council and the Cabinet continue to have confidence in the current leadership of the North East Ambulance Service?
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor X.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you for the question. Obviously, I don't know the full detail of the whistleblowing allegations. I do have a copy of the Care Quality Commission report, which is quite weighty, and I haven't had a chance to read it in detail, but I would make the following comments. This report is based on inspections made in July and September of last year, and I'm pleased to hear that the North East Ambulance Service confirmed that they have taken swift action in the 6 months since the first inspection and have provided additional assurances to the CQC that this work will ensure effective systems are in place to keep patients safe. I note the point raised by the NEAS that no ambulance service in the country is achieving national performance standards, and that despite that, NEAS remains one of the best performing services for response times, particularly to the highest level life-threatening incidents. I also note that the CQC report maintains a caring rating of good for NEAS, acknowledging the treatment of patients with compassion and kindness and with respect for privacy and dignity. As the NEAS rightly states, investment in their workforce is key to successful delivery of improvement action. The results of systematic underfunding of this service by government are clear, a government that the Liberal Democrats were part of for 5 long years. It's timely in light of today's strike action and illustrates why it is so important to stand up for the funding services needed to safely serve our residents. Underinvestment threatens lives and livelihoods. I would also like to highlight that the previous CQC inspection of our NEAS was in 2018, 2 years before the unprecedented challenges faced by our NHS was confronted with the COVID-19 pandemic and the immense strain and pressures that brought to not only our NEAS services, but the NHS in general. It would be unsurprising that given this is reflected in the evaluation of all of our NHS services. But Lord Mayor, what's next? An emergency question about how our hospitals are struggling, why our trains are cancelled? I question the purpose of the questions like these to this council, another public service facing draconian cuts to budgets and with no remit or powers over the services in question. We can recognise the impacts of cuts on the lives of the people we all serve, but is it really helpful to query our confidence in each other at a time when we should be supporting each other? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ferguson, you have one supplementary question.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Picking up on the final point that you've made there, Councillor Kemp, I wonder if you would support opposition calls to have a representative of NEAS attend the Health and Wellbeing Board, which has a statutory responsibility in the city for these matters, which is why we would ask the question in the first place, and indeed a representative to attend Health Scrutiny Committee, which looks at the same matters. Thank you.
In response, the scrutiny panels are independently run, and I would support the activities of the scrutiny panels.
Thank you. Is that the end of that one? Yes, thank you. We also, sorry? Yes, would you like to ask a question, Councillor Ali? I didn't see your hand.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I hope the Council shares my profound concern at learning from the CQC report that the ambulance crews in Newcastle frequently did not have adequate supplies of life-saving medicines on board at all times, and that ambulance staff did not always have the time to check that they had the correct medicine supplies and that they were stored safely. Does the Leader of the Council also share my concern about the integrity of the coronial process in the ambulance services as far back as 2019, which were unresolved and were not fully effective in their operation over the last 3 years? And can the Leader of the Council offer an assurance that the Council and the coroner are confident that these concerns are have now been suitably addressed and will be looked into. Thank you.
I apologise, Councillor Ali. I didn't hear the point about which investment into something services. Pardon?
Coroner service. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. I believe that NEAS themselves. I think all of the service personnel, both management and frontline services, would all share your concerns about the failure and lack of investment into public services, into the ambulance service, into the whole of the healthcare. So yes, I'm sure that we would all stand as one that actually substantive, long-term and appropriate public investment is required to supply these necessary services. And the second point, sorry, Councillor Ali. Do I have a confidence in them? Christ, I'm going through Greg to hear. Could I have a different translator? I apologise.
If I can be helpful to Councillor Kemp in explaining the question.
Thank you.
The reports, I have read the report identifies issues in terms of the coroner's function of the council obviously has a role with the coroner, but in terms of the ambulance services compliance with the legal requirements of the coroner service, and I don't think they have been doing that for quite some time.
I don't think I'm in an sufficiently informed position to address that point, but I will pick it up and respond directly.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We have another question marked for oral reply. This has been received from Councillor Huddart with regard to electricity cuts to housing plus assisted housing and over 55s apartments. And under Standing Order 9A, the question is deemed to have been put. I will then call upon Councillor Ali to respond. And she's not here, so Councillor Frew is doing it.
Councillor Ali is poorly. Wish her all of the best and hope we have her back in soon. So please don't shoot the messenger. I am just reading what I've been given here. Any follow-ups, I would recommend our email to Councillor Ali for a full response. So the response is as reads. Newcastle City Council and Your Homes Newcastle have worked in partnership regarding customer concerns raised over the publicised potential winter power cuts, and has been raised and discussed at Local Resilience Forum, and we have local resilience plans which cover power cuts. YHN have shared with customers Northern Power Grid's guidance on what to do and how to prepare for a power cut via social media outlets. It gives practical advice and key information on key contacts and reporting issues. YHN also monitors the status of blocks and are often the first to respond to any reported outages. YHN have a 24/7 contact centre and an out-of-hours support team on hand to address any issues encountered on the YHN side of the electrical supply. This consists of electricians, a caretaker response team for support, and senior management coverage for any strategic coordination where required. We hold details of any known vulnerable customers and ensure that they are prioritised for contact should any incidents occur. In addition to the above, we have sought advice from Northern Power Grid, and they have stated that the risk of power outages is no greater than any other year. They also have the responsibility to provide generators should there be a power failure, which they have previously done.
Thank you, Councillor Frew. Councillor Huddart, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. You probably preempted my supplemental question, which was about what can we do, or is there, or have arrangements been made for, that we can quickly acquire generators in cases of sudden loss of power? Because we could do with one in here now. However, as a supplemental to that, I'm sorry that Councillor Ali's not well. I was concerned that she'd gone on an inspection visit to Shieldfield House to look at the lifts, because the residents of that establishment have just been told that their lifts are going to be off until May. So I was rather worried that she might have got locked in a lift.
Thank you, Councillor Huddart. Councillor Kane.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Huddart has stole my thunder somewhat, because Shielfield House, as mentioned, it fits many of the categories of the blocks that Councillor Huddart asked in her question. Over 50s, one of the tallest buildings in the city, and yet during the massive heat wave in the summer, both lifts failed and residents were locked outside and we had to get bottled water shipped to them. And the lifts have been erratic ever since, and we, as Councillor Huddart said, we've recently been told that one of them will be off until May. So I realise Councillor Frew may not be able to answer this question, but I'd like it on the minutes, because this is becoming increasingly a bit of a scandal, is when will the residents of Shielfield House get reliable lifts?
Thank you, Councillor Kane.
Lord Mayor, can I just say that the question was on power cuts, and those were two entirely unrelated issues. If councillors do want a response on those things, why don't they email Councillor Ali directly about them?
Yes, thank you. Councillor Kane has done. We have 2 questions marked for written reply, and they have been circulated. The responses are included in the supplemental agenda and also published on the website. Agenda item 11, we come to Cabinet Member reports. Connected and Clean City. I call upon Councillor Byrne, Cabinet Member for Connected and Clean City, to present her portfolio report.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Before I begin my introduction, I would like to note that this is a partial report on my portfolio. I did not think it appropriate or respectful to discuss trees as part of a portfolio report, given that on January the 10th, Newcastle City Council pleaded guilty to 1 charge under Section 3 of the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, following the tragic events of the 25th of September 2020, when Ella Henderson, a 6-year-old schoolgirl, was killed by a falling section of willow tree while she was playing with friends in the playground of Gosford Park First School. So I'll bring a separate report to Council in March about trees, and I hope members will understand why I've made that decision.
Thank you.
Being Cabinet Member for Connected Clean City is a great honour. My portfolio covers everyday life in the city, collecting waste and recycling, keeping the streets clean, making sure people can move around easily and safely. Enjoying a decent everyday life is what socialism is all about, so to be able to contribute to achieving that in our city is a huge privilege. My portfolio also covers our work on the climate emergency, the challenge of our age. It's easy to give in to despair when we see the damage that has been done to our planet and the scale of the threat we face. Newcastle has chosen to respond with optimism, setting an ambitious target to be net zero by 2030 and committing to supporting and improving biodiversity in the city. Being part of that project gives me hope, and I look forward to working with partners across the city as we move forward on it. The Council gets a lot right. Our waste and recycling teams make over 3.5 million collections a year, 99% on the scheduled day. We carry out repairs to roads and pavements and work to make travel safer by improving junctions, introducing initiatives like school streets. We've reduced our CO2 emissions by 14% in 2020-21, a 52% reduction from our 2009-10 base year. However, we don't always do as well as we would like to. Funding plays a big part in that. We don't have the funding available to run our services in the way that we want to. Since 2010, we've experienced cuts of over 335 million to our core funding. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do the best with what we have, and we can and do look for more efficient ways of working, and we regularly bid for new sources of funding. We also need to keep reminding ourselves that what may seem like minor service failures or delays in the context of a huge organisation like ours can have a big impact on the people affected, and it's that impact we should measure ourselves by. So I hope I've managed to do that in the way that I've presented the report, and I look forward to questions. Before I finish, I'd like to thank all the staff whose hard work and determination enables us to achieve all that we do. My predecessors, Arlene Inslee, Jed Bell and Claire Penny-Evans, who initiated so many of the projects on this report. Nick Kemp for giving me the opportunity to take on this portfolio. And most importantly, all of the people who take the time to let me know when things aren't working as they should. Your feedback helps us improve. And I look forward to more of it right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Questions. We have 11 members wishing to speak. Can I remind you to ask questions rather than make speeches so that we can get it all in? And chances are, if you don't manage, Councillor Byrne, written response is always accepted. Thank you. Can I have Councillor Chisholm, followed by Councillor Campion, followed by Councillor Smith? Councillor Campion, you could start if you like to give Councillor Chisholm a chance.
Of course, more than happy to. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Given the Cabinet member's title is a connected city, can you please detail what work you did during the bus crisis faced by residents across the city at the end of 2022, when many residents were cut off, specifically those residents in the villages of Hazelrigg, Brunswick and Dinnington, who were left with almost no service at all, isolated and frankly unconnected? And then secondly, Newcastle's recycling rate is lower than a lot of other areas. Will the Cabinet member look into working with great Lib Dem run administrations, St Albans, South Oxfordshire, who are the top 2 recyclers in the country? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campion. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Byrne, for that report. My question is about, I think it's the transport question that I've been discussed most often by residents, and I think often receives minimal attention when we're talking about transport, and that's about pedestrians. So what I'd like to ask Councillor Byrne is, can she explain measures that the Council is taking to improve pedestrian safety so they can move safely and in a pleasant way around the city? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I guess it's appropriate that I've almost got frostbite when I'm going to ask a question about winter services. In answer to a written question last month, Councillor Byrne made it clear the bridges over major roads, such as the A69 and A1 that run through my ward, would not be treated in bad weather, and she said that a grip bin would be placed at each bridge. My question is being asked at the request of a Leamington resident who wants to know, does the council expect me to carry a shovel next time I travel on the bus to the shops or go to a hospital appointment or visit my GP? Surely there is no alternative, when there is no alternative to cross a road to access services that residents rely on, the footbridges should be a special case for gritting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Greenhough, Councillor Ashby, then Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Byrne for a report and for the walkabout that she arranged with myself and Councillor Barnes last summer. Delighted that we now will see a school crossing patrol at West Oak Primary, which I know is something that myself, Councillor Barnes and Councillor Mitchell have all raised. The Cabinet member will be aware of the substantial development in the Outer West, and I'd be grateful if she could outline the work that is being undertaken to improve the road network to tackle congestion and air quality, and with particular reference to Stamford and Road, which has seen a rapid deterioration in the quality of the road surface, with potholes appearing most recently. So if she could have a look into that and get back to us, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. What is the Cabinet member's policy on citing and emptying public litter bins on housing estates when they're adopted by the council? Residents of Melbury and Parklands have been still waiting to be adopted for more than 14 years. Will you ensure that they will receive the same level of public services for their high rates of council tax, which they've been paying for many years now, as the rest of the city?
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Byrne, for the report. I've found that many residents would like to play an active role in how their local environment is improved. Residents have told me that they want to help to make the changes that they want to see, with the community coming together to instigate, design, deliver and develop neighbourhood projects. What opportunities are there for communities to develop their own green spaces?
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm aware I did ask Councillor Byrne rather a lot of questions at scrutiny, but I've just got a couple more. Firstly, on graffiti, obviously the council does remove obscene and racist graffiti quite quickly, but other graffiti seems to hang around for a very long time. And I wondered, what is the priority about getting that removed? And do we talk to people like the utilities about graffiti on cabinets, etc.? It really does bring down the tone of an area and reduce people's feeling of the quality of life if the whole area is covered in graffiti. And the second question is about enforcement. A couple of areas. Firstly, the residents' parking schemes, which are quite widespread in my ward. Could she reassure me that the officers who were obviously otherwise employed during COVID are back out doing the enforcement? Because I do get complaints that they never seen in my area. And secondly, on the school streets, are we trying to get proper enforcement of the school streets? Because to be honest, without enforcement and penalties, I don't think it's going to be successfully rolled out across the city.
Thank you. So, Councillor Kane, so
yeah,
who are you
Lord.
Tonight? I don't have you on my list.
Well, I should have been on your list.
Right,
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Byrne, for a comprehensive report. It's a massive portfolio. If I could focus on waste. In November 2019, this council voted for a zero waste policy, and yet the term zero waste does not appear in her report. I would like to know why. And secondly, the report does remind us it's a full 5 years since the Waste Commission reported back to Council. We were told this would put the city on the world stage for waste, and yet we are still languishing in the bottom half of the recycling league table for England, so we're not even on the England stage. So my question is, when will things improve? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lovett, followed by Councillor Avaei.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Byrne, an interesting response you gave to the bus petition to support that tonight compared to last month. Question is, well, just if you look back at the video, you'll find the difference. I've been informed by city engineers during 2 Gosforth High Street workshops that the improvement scheme will be completed in 3 phases. The first 2 phases will be completed with bus fund money, which will speed up bus flow to the city centre through what the bus companies identify as a major route and the quickest way into the city. I've been informed at these workshops there's currently no money available for Phase 3. Phase 3 is to protect our neighbourhoods from the overspill of motorists, avoiding the high street and finding the quickest route from the city centre away from the high street. Not implementing neighbourhood protection schemes will mean high volumes of traffic moving into East and West Gosforth between the Town Moor and Regent Centre. Does Councillor Byrne agree with me that Phase 3 funding should be found and implemented in parallel with Phase 1? Or will Councillor Byrne go ahead regardless and the neighbourhoods will have to suffer before the funding becomes available? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Avaei, followed by Councillor Huddart, and then Councillor Woodard.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm asking this question on behalf of Hazelrigg Parish Council, who have been stopped from asking this question themselves tonight. Hazelrigg Parish Council is a statutory consultee in the planning process. Was not informed about the planning installation of a huge 5-mast in the centre of Hazelrigg village. The original planning application was met with opposition and refused in late 2021. This decision was subsequently appealed by the applicant, but the parish council were not informed about the appeal. The mast appeared in August 2022 and the monopole later in October.
Question, Councillor.
The inspector's report makes no mention of the levels of objections that were made to this planning application. On the ground, while the applicant's grounds of appeal highlights that the City Council made no effort to find alternative locations to the mast. despite the parish council...
Please, the question, please, Councillor Avaei.
My question will be, given the objections that the parish council and the residents have had to this planning application and the initial concerns not being part of the planning report, will the council consider working with the parish council and 3 to move the mast to an alternative location that does not impact the residents as significantly? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Huddart, then Councillor Woodard.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne, you mention in your report 2,300 collections from commercial operations per week. I'm wondering what your plans are to increase this, particularly building waste, which obviously can be recycled. And my second question is related to air quality and monitoring. We had Castle Farm Bridge closed to traffic, but open to bicycles. This has resulted in the displacement of a lot of vehicles onto Newton Road and the Coast Road, and the air quality there has gone down. And we would like that particularly monitored because it doesn't appear in the figures now for monitoring. The only thing we get is that the bridge is clearer. Well, it will be because it's only got cycles on it now. Thank you.
Councillor Woodard. You should have been standing ready.
To ask the Cabinet Member, she will know about this, confirming progress on plans for Gosforth High Street. It's slightly a different point to the point that Councillor Lovett made. We were told late last year that plans were supposed to be out for wide consultation early in the new year. And so far, we've not had any concrete proposals put out for consultation. Can the Cabinet Member state when these will be sent out, that they will achieve lower pollution and it won't just become a bus throughway, and that actually there will be some wider context about economic regeneration of Gosforth High Street too?
Thank you, Councillor Woodard. Councillor Byrne, are you ready?
Okay. I think I better begin with an apology that if I miss anybody or misinterpret, please, I will follow up in writing. The first one I do want to address, though, that the Hazelrig Parish Council, it's a planning issue and planning isn't within my portfolio, so it's not something that I can answer. To follow up on what the things that I do cover, firstly, Councillor Smith, with the gritting bridges, I would like to take that up with you separately because I did ask officers to work with local councillors on what the possible solutions could be, including involving local businesses. So I'm concerned that that wasn't the message you got, so I hope we can talk about that. For Councillor Ashby, your question, I think, was about the adoption of estates. That is a challenge, and it's something that we're looking at in terms of, obviously, what developers need to do in order to have adoption. What I can confirm is that where estates are adopted, they will, of course, get the same resources and support. But again, I'd be happy to talk to you outside of this meeting about particular local concerns there. Councillor Greenhough, yes, thank you for your question about the developments in the Outer West. And yes, we are acutely aware that as the communities are changing, we need to make sure that we are developing a traffic system that works appropriately. As you'll be aware, there's a substantial amount of work going on that is trying to not only deal with current traffic, but anticipate and make sure that it all flows appropriately in the future. And we will continue to do that and to work with you and your colleagues to make sure that that area gets the support that it needs. Councillor Taylor, yes, we do ask utilities. So I've had issues in my own ward where we've had utility boxes defaced by graffiti, and we've worked with them to have things repainted and repaired and things like that. Obviously, in terms of the speed of removing graffiti, that's very much around the kind of balance that I talked about the constraints that we face on funding. I would like to remove graffiti far more quickly, but in the circumstances we've had to prioritise other things. I think it's always worth conversations because you make a valid comment about how it makes people feel about their area. So I'm happy to open up conversations about other approaches if we could. Councillor Ellis, you've touched on one of my priorities for the coming year, which is how we work with the communities to help improve their local area, because it's very much about community ownership and how the council can enable and support those local greening initiatives. So I'm looking forward to be out there planting something with you soon, I hope. Councillor Chisholm, you've touched on something that is extremely close to my heart, and I think sometimes we risk overlooking when we talk about traffic and connection, which is about pedestrians. When I talk about pedestrians, I'm talking about walking and wheeling, obviously people who use wheelchairs and other assisted mobility. I think we do a lot. I think we've achieved quite a lot when we talk about the results of the school streets and the neighbourhood traffic zones to make places safer and pleasanter and make walking more enjoyable. I do think, however, that it's something that we need to prioritise even further. I think we need to, because pedestrians don't have an organisation as such, sometimes their voice isn't heard as loudly as it might be. So I'm keen to work with you and with any other colleagues as to how we can make sure that pedestrians who are at the top of the road hierarchy, I will always remind myself of that, do get their voices heard, and we make sure that everything is planned with them in mind. Councillor, I would offer the same support to any community who was concerned about their bus service, so I'm slightly puzzled by that one. I will answer your question and Councillor Woodcock's in terms of Gosforth. As I've already communicated to Councillor Ferguson, both directly and through the media, I'm very keen to meet with you all to discuss what the next steps are for Gosforth, and I'd hope to arrange that meeting early next week. We will be looking at a scheme that is in phases, because that's the way that we'll have to work, and but every phase of that scheme will produce benefits for residents. It's not correct that any scheme that we have would result in more traffic on the side streets. So I'm not quite sure where that comes from, and we certainly would never proceed with a scheme where we thought it would have a negative impact on residents. Obviously, I can't comment on particular conversations that I wasn't privy to. So I've gone slightly rambled on that one. I'll sum it up by, let's talk about Gosforth next week. We'll set up a workshop. Councillor Huddart. Trade waste is a traded service, so obviously I am keen to grow that, but that's a matter, that is something that we do on a commercial basis. Air quality monitoring, yes, I'm absolutely open to reviewing our air quality monitoring so that we do make sure that there aren't any unintended consequences of our actions, and where they are we can deal with them. Councillor Kane, waste, yes, as I'll talk the waste team, we can say the council agreed zero waste to landfill. I hope that our commitment to that was made clear in my portfolio report, but as I'm always happy to take challenge and to talk more about that. I think we are making good progress. I think we have to remind ourselves that the council is an enabler in this. We cannot absolutely determine how people behave around their waste. I think we have an excellent engagement team working on recycling. We can always look to improve and to do more. And to answer Councillor Campion, yes, absolutely. I am so committed to solving the climate emergency, both locally and globally, that I will work with anyone, including looking for good examples from Liberal Democratic councils. And what did I do in the Great Bus Crisis? Well, I did what any responsible councillor should do as a representative of the council. We continue to work with partners, and we work with Nexus, and we work with the bus companies. And I would hope that our commitment to improving the bus service is seen in the paper, in our actions, but also in the paper that we took to Cabinet, where we reinforced the importance of making sure that we have a successful bus loop for the city, and the work that we will work to do that so that every community is appropriately connected. I hope I've covered everything. If not, I do apologise. Councillor Taylor.
Enforcement.
Oh, yes, sorry, I did. Yes, we enforce. Yes, we do have the enforcement team back on the streets, but I think you've made an important point there. I think we could communicate better about when we've been out and what the impact has been, because I think that would help you as ward members to have those conversations. I can't promise that we can do enforcement everywhere. I'm again going to make the point about funding there, but we can do targeted enforcement, and that means working with communities to get the best possible intelligence on the right places and times to go, and to feedback when we've had that success. So I will commit to doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Does Council agree to receive the report? Thank you. We have another portfolio report. I call upon Councillor Kilgour, Cabinet Member for Healthy Caring City, to present her portfolio report and the Adult Social Care Local Account.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I hesitate to say that I'm perhaps not quite as prepared as I would want to be, because I was watching Newcastle play last night, as I'm sure lots of people in the council chamber tonight are. So I'd like to extend my congratulations for what they're worth, along with yours. It was a fantastic result. So if you don't mind, Lord Mayor, I'd like to start with a few thank yous. Thank you to the council officers who pulled the annual report and local account together. They've done a great job, as always. Thank you also to the members of Health Scrutiny Committee for a wide-ranging and robust conversation. And I really do genuinely value their collective knowledge and the challenge and oversight that they bring. And the last thank yous are to my colleagues, Councillor Ian Tokell, who's taken over the role as mental health champion from our former colleague, Felicity Mendelssohn, and Councillor Teresa Cairns, who's agreed to be our food champion, to continue the work instigated by former Councillor Paula Holland. Lord Mayor, I'm really proud to bring this annual report to Council tonight. The Healthy Caring City portfolio brings together health, social care and public health for the first time, so covers a wide-ranging, although interconnected, set of services and policies. Much of the public health side of the report's already been covered admirably by our Acting Director of Public Health this evening, so I won't repeat what she's already said. One of my often voiced bugbears is that the government narrative, and therefore the media narrative in this country, around adult social care is a negative one, seen entirely as a subsidiary of the health service and to blame for bed blocking or for forcing older people to sell their homes to pay for residential care. I hope this report goes some way to dispel those myths by showing the breadth of services we provide, both in adult social care and via public health. Of course, supporting people on discharge from hospital and commissioned residential and nursing care are very important, but they're a part of what we do, not the entirety. The demand for adult social care in the city continues to grow. In 2021 to 22, we had 9,539 requests for support from people who did not already draw on care and support through the council. 976 more requests than the previous year. And last year saw an increase of 38% in safeguarding concerns reported. And our city is growing and growing older. With more people living in our city than ever before, the need for care and support continues to grow. Census data shows a 7% increase in the city's population and a 15% increase in the 65-plus age group since the last census. And of course, as we all know, at the same time as increased demand and increased complexity of need, budgets have shrunk as a result of government cuts, with a series of short-term funding pots announced as temporary sticking plasters in an attempt to hide the worsening national crisis we're seeing across the health and social care sector. Government has got its priorities completely wrong. If it can waste billions of pounds of public money on unusable PPE, then it can properly fund adult social care and invest in prevention measures through public health. As the report shows, around 9,600 people work in adult social care in this city. While that covers a huge range of jobs, the majority will be lower paid, filled by women, and I think it's reasonable to assume a fair number will also be unpaid carers. This administration has an ambition for a truly inclusive economy, one where people's health and well-being is valued and where the labour of those who play a caring role is recognised and rewarded. Which is why I'm delighted that we're now an accredited real living wage employer, benefiting our own staff and those whose services we commission. I hope these reports will be welcomed by Council as a realistic portrayal of what we do, and also a celebration of what we do, and what we do well, I have to say. Adult social care staff and our public health team are making a real difference to the lives of real people in this city, helping them to live as independently and safely as possible in their own homes and communities, being supported to do the things that they value. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kilgour. Questions? Councillor Shatwell, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Mitchell. And can I remind councillors, questions, not speeches. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report, Councillor Kilgour. My question's a short one. How are we as a council supporting recruitment and retention in the care sector? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. A couple of short questions. The report makes it clear, the survey makes it clear that only 2/3 of our residents are satisfied with their care and support. Now, I know the council doesn't actually provide all the care and support, and it may be outside agencies, but we do have influence those. I wondered how you were going to try and improve that. And in the report, you also mentioned to ask the government for a fairer cap on care costs. Now, no, we're not actually going to get a cap on care costs as promised, but it is going to come in a couple of years. So I wondered what you actually meant by that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis, followed by Councillor Huddart.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kilgour, for your report. My question's about the pressures our services are under due to the ever-deepening crisis in the NHS. Can you tell me what effect this is having on adult social care in the city, please?
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Huddart, followed by Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have two questions for Councillor Kilgour. The first one, we had a report about the West End Food Bank and people going in there to give advice about benefits, universal credit, etc. And it was very impressive. And I wondered if you were able to get that expanded to some of the other food banks so that it's across the city, that kind of advice. And the second question is about reablement. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you can do to expand this more to localities in the community so that people don't have to trot up to the hospital to see a physiotherapist. If we can make better use of the health centres, maybe local libraries or church halls or something like that for that kind of those kinds of reablement exercises. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huddart. Councillor Chisholm, followed by Councillor Morrissey.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kilgour, for your report. And I was pleased to hear your mention of the important role of carers in the city in your report, Councillor Kilgour. And that's what my question is about. I'd like you, if you can, please, to outline the council's plans to support the participation of carers in the city, in the life of the city, and their access to council services. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morrissey.
Thank you. I've got two very short questions. On pages 21 and 22 of the report, fair and healthy childhood experiences have profound impacts on children's lives, and the questions are about that. Priority 2 is to reduce the health impact of childhood poverty. So can this service also include further work on destigmatising the idea of free school meals and reaching out to as many families as possible who do qualify for free school meals and support them to apply? Also, introducing ideas such as digital recognition may also increase uptake of older children who are often reluctant to be labelled. So can this be investigated too? And on priority 3, the review also highlighted opportunities to do more targeted work around mental health and emotional well-being. This is an area of concern for our children in care have brought to the Corporate Parent Committee on a regular basis and as recently as our meeting last week. So can the service work with these young people that we already have in key consultation roles to maximise effect and ensure best value? Thank you.
Councillor Morrissey. Councillor Campion, followed by Councillor Ashby and Councillor Ferguson.
You just like to see me jog, don't you, Lord Mayor? Thank you very much for the report. A lot of the health messaging that you've spoken about is sort of centred around city centre, our major metropolitan area, but I was wondering what work has been done on the public health messaging in the northern part of our city, in our villages that often are isolated and left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ashby.
Lord Mayor, thank you, Councillor Kilgour, for your report, and I cast my mind back to when you were the Armed Forces champion for Newcastle and the work you did there and your concern for our Armed Forces veterans. And that is what I want to touch on this evening, which is to make sure that their situation, their mental and physical health is getting no worse, and that we are continuing to focus upon them. And I welcome your assurance on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
As a general point across the portfolio as a whole, you know, I think it is regularly observed that preventative and early intervention approaches are cheaper and yield better outcomes for the people involved, but they're often the first to go because they're often not the things that have the kind of statutory underpinning in terms of the service that's provided. So I just welcome your views on how we try as much as possible to implement those kind of preventative and early intervention approaches and maintain them in difficult financial circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Kilgour, are you ready to respond?
You didn't warn me there were so many questions, Lord Mayor. So, Councillor Taylor asked about fairer cap on care. I think it's something we need to think about on a national level. Clearly, it's not something we can do locally. We all are aware that we need a complete review of how social care is funded and delivered. I would want to see, if it was up to me, I would want to see a free at the point of delivery service paid for by national taxation but delivered locally. But whether we ever get there or not is another thing entirely. The satisfaction rates, again, I think that's a really good point, and I think it's something that I know Health Scrutiny Committee and yourself have focused on over a number of years. Clearly, it's a question, the questions aren't set, we can't set the questions, they're set nationally. We can't ask people, as a supplementary question, what parts of their care are they not happy with. And given people's experiences during COVID, I think that there are a lot of people who are feeling vulnerable, a lot of people who aren't accessing what they might otherwise have accessed, who maybe aren't getting support in the same way, and I think that's probably part of it. I think what we will try and do, what we are trying to do is have a bit of more of a deep dive into certain cohorts to see if we can work out if there is a specific issue, and if there is, if it's something that the council can respond to directly. Councillor Huddart asked about the West End food banks and about extending advice and support. My colleague, Councillor Hay, assures me that the Welfare Rights Service is being expanded. Is that correct? Yes, thank you. So that's a nice, easy one to answer. Reablement, I think it depends, I think, which service you're referring to. The council's reablement service isn't something that is located in hospital. The reablement team that's part of the council is the service that supports people when they come out of hospital but still need continuing support. So they are available in all of our neighbourhoods and all of our localities. Clearly, if there's an issue with an NHS-delivered service and there are issues with people accessing NHS OTs or physios, and I'm sure that's something we can pick up and work with them on through the ICB or just in our general conversations through Collaborative Newcastle. So I'm happy to take that up if on your behalf. Councillor Morrissey asked about free school meals and destigmatisation of it. I think some of the messaging that we heard, some of the beliefs that we've just heard from our Acting Director of Public Health would indicate that that's clearly an issue. We would do everything we can to ensure that free school meals have no stigma attached to them. We're doing everything we can to make sure that there's as high an uptake of the people who are entitled to them as possible. and you're talking about digital recognition. I know that's something that a number of schools provide. I will speak with my colleague, Councillor Copley, to see if that's something that we can actually influence as a local authority, bearing in mind that those schools, or a lot of our secondary schools, are academies. I think you also asked about reviewing targeted work. Sorry, I'm not sure I caught the whole of the question. Again, I'll confer with my colleague and I will get back to you on that one if that's okay. Councillor Campion asked about public health messaging in villages. I think, again, it's a very valid point. I think we are trying to make sure that our messages are not only targeted properly geographically, but also into communities of interest, to make sure that we've got the right messaging for the right people, so that it's not one blanket message that covers the whole of Newcastle. And I think our community champions are an important part of that. They're people who live in the communities that they're representing, and I'm sure that will cover the northern villages as well as the rest of the city, but I'll certainly check that. Councillor Ashby, thank you very much for your kind words. It's very, very kind of you. The mental and physical health of our veterans is a priority. It's a public health priority. We did some work. We had a conference in Newcastle recently, and I know my colleague, Councillor Gray, as the Armed Forces Champion, attended, as did I, the recovery walk and work that was the conference that was being held around recovery from drug and alcohol addiction, with a focus particularly on veterans. So we're continuing to work with the veterans charities. We're continuing to work through our public health team with either individual veterans or with those charitable organisations, because we are mindful that particularly around mental health and some of the substance misuse, that we have that the messaging needs to be different, and we need to make sure that our services are available to those people who need them. Councillor Ferguson asked about prevention and intervention and how we implement and maintain them. Again, really, really valid point. I think while we have a ring-fenced public health grant, then we're in a better position to implement those and maintain those services. I think it does become difficult if you have even it doesn't matter how much you acknowledge or how much information you have that shows that those services will prevent money being spent down the line. Quite often that money being spent down the line is by a different organisation. And if your organisation is faced with huge cuts and you have a statutory duty to deliver certain services, and that almost inevitably becomes your priority. So I think we need to be really mindful and really careful about how we look at our budget proposals and how we make sure that those interventions and those preventative programmes are protected as far as we possibly can. And I'm sure it's something you'll keep an eye on in scrutiny. Councillor Chisholm asked about support to carers in the community. We've built lessons learnt from the pandemic into the new carers contract. There's a strong emphasis on linking their offer to Newcastle neighbourhoods work and a focus on strength-based approach to supporting carers in their communities and identifying and utilising community assets to do this. We've also widened out the offer, so the offer is available in a variety of community spaces, including some of our libraries. I think there's 4 areas of the city it's now available in, and it means that service is in each of our 4 home care zones. So that means that our home care staff who might also be unpaid carers can access it, and it also means that people who might have difficulty accessing the main office of Newcastle Carers in Biker have an opportunity to access the same offer of support in their own communities. And the series we've got other services that are supporting people, because we know that people who provide more than 20 hours of care a week are more likely to experience loneliness and isolation. So we're looking at how we can upskill staff on social prescribing as an intervention for loneliness, and hopefully referrals to the social prescribing link workers will reduce carer loneliness and isolation and increase carers' health and well-being. And we're making sure also that those workers are well linked into the rest of the directorate to make sure they can attend regular network events, get an understanding of the organisation and the other relevant stakeholders across Newcastle. Councillor Ellis asked about the impact of the NHS crisis on adult social care. As we know, there's a national pressure across the NHS in terms of hospital discharge, with occupancy levels increasing across Newcastle Hospitals Trust at a record level in recent months. Newcastle Hospital Trusts are reporting an unprecedented occupancy rate of 99%. And this is due to large increases in admissions alongside problems discharging from hospital, due in part to capacity in the social care market, but bear in mind they discharge to a number of local authorities, and the ability to provide packages of care across domiciliary, residential and nursing care. Obviously, the advent of the twindemic of COVID-19 and flu cases has impacted on staff shortages across the health and social care system. We have an operational group, including key adult social care and integrated services staff, which continues to meet weekly with a focus on preventing hospital admissions and creating capacity to help with hospital discharges. And we've got a number of short-term schemes that are currently being progressed using the Adult Social Care Discharge Fund. So all efforts are being made to mobilise the schemes, and I think there's a real willingness across all parts of the health and social care system in the city to make this work. We have the temporary appointment of additional staff working into Connie Lucock and Biker Lodge resource centres to provide additional capacity to deliver timely pre-admission assessments, to support appropriate placements and speedy discharge. And we've also secured a social care assessment officer post to join the existing social work team, again to increase capacity to deliver discharge support. And finally, as a provider of last resort, the Council's reablement team that I mentioned earlier has been instrumental in supporting the provider market by picking up additional packages at short notice wherever the team has had capacity. Councillor Shotwell asked about recruitment and retention. There's been a lot of work has gone into this actually. Recruitment materials have been designed and produced incorporating all of the different branding. We've distributed to skills hubs, we've utilised them at jobs fairs, schools, college events, banners placed in prominent positions outside of resource centres. We've used the creation of QR codes, linked to job adverts and web pages for easier access. We've improved our links with employee services colleagues, careers advisors, job centre, information now, comms, I could go on, to promote services and current vacancies. We've reworded job adverts to try and highlight the benefits of working in this sector, and particularly the benefits of working for the council where the vacancies are ours. With rolling adverts, we've extended closing dates, we've changed shift patterns, all sorts of things to try and make things easier to understand and to apply for. We've also trialled advertising vacancies on Indeed. We've got different accounts to help promote individual services, all sorts of things. There's been recruitment events across the past 12 months, which have included careers fairs. And we've actually worked to try and support minority communities to come into the care sector, and that's included some work with Ukrainian refugees in the city. And we've also got the Made with Care North East campaign, which is the first time the 12 local authorities in the North East have come together for a campaign of this scale to work jointly and without borders for a shared aim to raise awareness of social care work and to encourage recruitment and retention into and within the sector. So I hope I've covered everything. If I haven't, please let me know and I will happily get the information to you. But to sum up, Lord Mayor, yes, public health is faced with the impact of 12 years of austerity and worsening levels of poverty and its effects. Adult social care continues to weather the storm of a national funding crisis and all the problems that brings with it. But I think if you look at the case studies in the two reports, you get a real feel for the amazing work that's being done with some of our equally amazing residents. Just imagine what more we could do if we were properly funded. I move the report, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kilgour. Does Council agree to receive the report? Thank you. Agenda item number 13, appointments. Are the appointments agreed as set out on the supplemental agenda? Now we go to the motions.
Under Standing Order 3D, can I move a motion without notice to change the agenda to move the items that were meant to be agendas, items 15 to item 14, item 18 to item 15, and item 19 to item 16. No, it's seconded and then taken without discussion, Lord Mayor, in the standing orders. I've moved.
So was it seconded?
Was it seconded? Right.
Point of order, Lord Mayor, which can be heard
It's right, I'll let you come past first. Lord Mayor, this is absolutely outrageous.
It's not a point,
it is
discussion.
absolutely
This is a
and
discussion,
utterly
not a point of order.
outrageous that you would even think to bring this
Lord Mayor.
motion forward in this way. I want to
Lord
clarify.
Mayor, this is not a point of order.
I would want to clarify as a point of order, which I would have done already if you wouldn't stop it, if you didn't keep interrupting me. I would like to understand, as a question of order, whether the flagrant abuse of item 3D in an attempt to what I believe nakedly gerrymander the remainder of the business of this council meeting is in keeping with the spirit and intent of standing orders, to have due regard for the importance of business, the need to address public expectations, and the need to ensure political balance. So that is my question of order, Lord Mayor, and I am happy to take your view on that. Disgraceful.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. 1 moment while I take advice.
Lord Mayor, I think members are aware that the provisions in standing orders do provide for the change to the order of business in the way that's been described to be by way of a resolution passed on a motion which will be moved, seconded and put without discussion. That is what standing orders provide.
So I'm afraid one way or another somebody's going to be disappointed. We're going to go to a vote. Go to a vote. I'm assuming the hand waving is you can't do it right. We'll go. Councillor Wood. Yes. Councillor Higgins. Councillor Byrne. Oh, is that Councillor Story? Did you have your hand up there? Yes. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Ashby. Councillor Keating. Did we catch that one, Councillor?
It's democratic, it's in the standing order.
Oh, 1 moment, please. Did you get that, Linda? Yeah.
I told you yesterday I've done more than I'm required to do. Thank you very much.
So
It's been carried.
It's been carried. So
Next item.
first notice of motion is about the trade unions. That's number 15. Call upon Councillor Kilgour.
I'm assuming that all of us who are proud card-carrying union members are going to leave, for we have an interest in such a motion. Am I correct that we must leave as we have an interest in the motion? Thank
It's
you.
not a peculiar interest.
I really don't know. I suppose if you can leave if you want, Councillor Campion.
Point of order. Point of order, Lord Mayor.
No, sorry, I wasn't meaning that in any way. I just mean that's good.
Under the provisions of standing orders, I believe it was 3D, can I move next business?
What? I don't... You're losing me now,
I'm
folks. Sorry.
I'm proposing in a standing order, proposing a motion without notice to move to next business.
What does that mean?
Lord Mayor, it would be helpful if Councillor Stone could clarify which
I'm
provision
proposing
of
to
standing orders.
move the standing orders under, I believe it was 3D that was recited, but I can move a motion without prior notice. I'm moving next business, Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, it's standing order 18.
Well, it doesn't look like we're going to get any motions done today, so...
Well, we can go to a vote on that my motion, if someone second it.
Lord Mayor, could I deal with the question that Councillor Campion raised?
Yes.
I think, given the question about the interest, I don't think there's... members will have been required to register on the Register of Interests any trade union membership, and I don't think the nature of the proposed notice of motion warrants members to withdraw from the meeting. I think it's sufficient that they've recorded that membership on the Register of Interests.
Thank you, Mr Softly. And for Councillor Stones?
I'm just trying to understand which provision of standing orders you're relying on.
I can propose, as has just been done, we can propose without notice a motion to move to the next business.
I mean, again, that would have to be seconded.
Can we vote on it, please, Lord Mayor?
Right, you know what it is? This is the first time you've kicked off. So please, can we just remember, please, respect. Yeah. Where are we going?
I mean, Lord Mayor, technically that has to be moved at the end of a speech, and there hasn't been a speech on this item. So I don't think it's possible to move that motion at the present time.
Right. Well, I'm sorry, folks. This is beyond me. So, I'm assuming we just carry on with agenda item 15.
Correct.
Sorry. I mean, agenda item 15, supporting our trade unions. Councillor Kilgour.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And just to clarify, this is not about being anti-democratic or anything else. This is about 3 motions that are particularly timely, particularly pertinent to today and this month, which is why we've brought them forward. Lord Mayor, as a lifelong trade unionist and Labour Party member, I'm proud to bring this motion to Council today on TUC Protect the Right to Strike Day, a day which saw public sector workers stage one of the largest ever protests in order to protect their fundamental right to strike. And this alongside multiple trade unions and hundreds of thousands of their members striking over issues such as terms and conditions, improving their pay and protecting the services they deliver. Make no mistake, the public sector and public sector workers have been undervalued, underpaid and under-resourced by successive coalition and Conservative governments since 2010, and we are seeing the results of that now, with huge waiting lists, record vacancies and sky-high inflation, burnt-out staff and nurses and firefighters forced to use food banks because their pay no longer covers their outgoings. A cost of living crisis that the out-of-touch Tories fail to comprehend. And what is this government's answer to this crisis? Not negotiation, not talks with the trade unions to try and understand the issues. No. Their answer is to legislate to prevent strikes happening, to remove a fundamental right of workers to withdraw their labour and hand sweeping powers to the Secretary of State, rushing the bill through Parliament to prevent proper scrutiny. Even Jacob Rees-Mogg has raised concerns about the bill, saying it was badly written and criticised a so-called Henry VIII clause in the bill, which allows ministers to amend the legislation after it has become law without full parliamentary scrutiny. The BBC quote him as saying, "On what basis can any government claim to have the power to amend legislation that has not yet been passed? The only argument for doing it, which no government would wish to advance, could be incompetence." Well, quite. Council, our public sector is being eroded, our public sector workers a sacrifice the government is willing to make. No one wants to go on strike. No one wants to lose pay, to not carry out the jobs they feel so passionately about. There may be several different ongoing disputes, but workers came together today to speak with one voice and with one aim, to highlight the real-term pay cuts they've endured and continue to endure in the middle of a cost of living crisis, to call out the lack of investment and avoidable falling standards, and to defend their right to strike. And I absolutely accept the point made in the opposition's amendment that trade unions represent private and third sector workers, but I'm sorry the opposition felt the need to trivialise today and this motion with their amendment. Far from not supporting strikers, the Labour Party leadership is committed to scrapping the Tories' anti-strike bill, which is certainly more than I've heard from the Liberal Democrats. I hope history will look back on today as a catalyst for change. The day when the British public realised they had options, that they could choose a better and different way, that they could reward frontline workers with better pay and conditions rather than just claps. Government too has choices. Austerity is a political choice. Our government has chosen this path, and we must do everything we can to stand in solidarity with today's striking workers and demand fair pay increases, safe working conditions and proper investment in the public sector, fully funded by central government. We must stand in solidarity with our trade unions and defend the right to strike. I move the motion, Lord Mayor, and I urge Council to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Kilgour. I have this to be seconded by Councillor Kemp.
In the words of Joe Hill, there is power in the union, and colleagues, we are seeing the power in the union and the power of unions. From the onset of the Industrial Revolution, working men and women have been withholding their labour as a means of bargaining for better pay and conditions. So as proud trade unionists and politicians, we need to stand up like our forefathers, and we need to protect the right to take industrial action to win back all those rights systematically taken away since the days of Thatcher. This morning I was pleased to join and show solidarity on picket lines with colleagues from ASLEF, PSU and the NEU, and to see so many colleagues from this chamber joining the hundreds, possibly 1,000 trade unionists taking industrial action on the march and rally. The right to withdraw our labour is one of the most fundamental pillars of a free democratic society, and the Tories are actively threatening that right. We've got to defend the right to strike as fiercely as we defend the right to vote. Draconian and undemocratic measures are about to be imposed by a government that has spent over a decade creating the situation we're in now. High inflation, a pay crisis in our public sector, the NHS on its knees, and an economic outlook as grim as the constant sleaze that flows out of Whitehall. The government claims this new law will bring us in line with the rest of Europe, but the European Trade Unions Congress doesn't agree. It says the UK already has among the most draconian restrictions on the right to strike in Europe, and the UK's government plans will push it even further away from normal democratic practice across Europe. As the General Secretary of my union, the JMB, said, a government that has presided over 13 years of failure in public services is now seeking to scapegoat the NHS staff and ambulance workers who do so much to care for the people of our country. The NHS cannot function on goodwill alone and its incredible staff, and attacking their fundamental right to take action will alienate them even further. Strikes are always a symptom of a problem, but the government's answer is to fast-track new legislation that will add further restrictions on the right to strike in the health, education, transport, fire and rescue, as well as border security and parts of the nuclear, radioactive waste and fuel sectors. It's another sticking plaster that won't fix the deep-rooted causes of industrial disputes, another distraction from their ability to manage the country's public services and our economy. But we know the government doesn't believe in workers' rights since the election of Thatcher in 1979, with trade union attacks, 5 employment acts and 2 trade union acts starting the cuts of workers' rights. The impact of failure to invest in public services and apply appropriate terms and conditions is damaging to individuals, communities and the state.
Time, Councillor. Oh, is that it? Oh, well done.
No, I'm quite happy doing another hour.
No, well, I know you're, yeah. We have an amendment moved by Councillor Campion, seconded by Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you very much.
I was just reminding you to watch the time, to watch the clock.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I too was, like Councillor Kemp, very pleased to join many colleagues across the chamber today and workers across Newcastle on the march this morning. It was a fantastic show of solidarity, and my thanks goes to everybody who came and joined us. Now, you'll be pleased to know this is just a simple amendment. I'm sure all colleagues can get behind, as all it does is clear up a few things. So firstly, it is incredibly important to note that many people employed in the private and third sector, like myself, for example, are also card-carrying union members, and I can assure you are just as impacted by the cost of living crisis as our public sector colleagues. Furthermore, it may pain colleagues on the other side of the chamber to hear, but it is a statement of fact that the current Labour Party front bench have been profoundly anti-union, with one shadow minister, Sam Tarry, being removed from his position for going to a picket line, and the Labour leader Keir Starmer issuing a diktat that no shadow ministers were to appear at any further picket lines. A strange showing of solidarity, if you ask me. Now, let's put all of that aside for 1 minute and come back to what we can agree on, that there is a cost of living crisis that is impacting our public sector workers, the nurses who we rely on to look after us, the teachers who teach our children, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, the university lecturers who provide a vital service to our young people in our city. These are people who fundamentally should not be having to choose between, ironically in this room at the moment, heating and eating. They are people who we should always stand behind to ensure they receive a fair pay deal. And right now, this Tory government is refusing to give them that. This Tory government is refusing to allow businesses to give them that. It's the Tory government who turned around to train companies and said, no, don't settle, don't give them the deal, hold out. And what's that done? Cost us billions in productivity. It is a disgrace that this Tory government has got away with what they have. Now, I will note that just because it was brought up, the Liberal Democrats do have very strong positions on supporting our unions, supporting our workers. Unfortunately, our autumn conference was cancelled due to the death of Her Majesty. But if you were there, we would have set out that as part of one of the many policy papers we like to bring to our conferences. So we will join you in supporting our unions. Don't worry. Look out for the paper in York. It's going to be fantastic. We are a party that is truly liberal, that has always stood up for workers' rights. We are the party that helped champion workers' rights in the early 1900s and helped introduce some of the amazing things that we now rely on as part of workers' rights. Not only that, we are the party that fundamentally championed the European Union. Again, an organisation we get so many of our vital workers' rights from. So before you start accusing us of not being pro-worker and not being pro-union, let's just have a think about that. I'll finish by saying that I hope all colleagues will join me in supporting this amendment and supporting this motion, in standing up against this terrible Tory government, in giving all workers a fair share of the money that they deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Campion. Councillor Ferguson, would you like to speak or reserve?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll speak while I still have the chance in the chamber. I'm pleased to support the amendment, which I urge Council to support. Workers deserve fair pay for fair work. Workers' rights have been hard fought for over many years, and unions have in the past been at the forefront of this fight. Collective action is a fundamental right. As a former union member, I know and understand the importance of workers coming together to call for a fair deal. And it's obvious that swathes of the working population don't feel that that's the case right now. There will always be a debate about the right balance, and we should acknowledge that, particularly in the challenging economic circumstances a succession of bumbling and ineffective Tory Prime Ministers have created. There isn't, unfortunately, a tremendous amount of money going around. That's one reason why the amendment removes an arbitrary target for public expenditure. If there's one silver lining to Liz Truss's disastrous premiership, it's that unfunded expenditure commitments without a clear account of how the public finances will be managed will cost us all dearly and leave even less money in the coffers for public expenditure afterwards. Corbynite dreams of unfettered public spending have no place in serious proposals to address the cost of living crisis impact on struggling workers' pay packets. The other reason is that within this wide-ranging, perhaps rambling motion, unionised workers in the private sector are missed out. And that perhaps strikes to the heart of my concern of where the original motion is coming from. Unions at their best stand up for the rights of their members, drive a good bargain for workers, and protect the interests of those who need a voice. My deeply held liberal instincts tell me that this is good, fair, and right. Unions at their worst are simply anti-Tories. And the Tories, no doubt, have a lot to answer for. But political attacks on a single party, if that's the primary objective, isn't the way to drive a good bargain. Won't always protect workers' interests, doesn't always stand up for their rights. Unions' work might be small p political, but it shouldn't be big P political. I bet some members opposite might strongly disagree, but their national leadership seems to feel that way, such as their squeamishness to be seen on the picket lines, as Councillor Campion notes. So let's agree across this chamber that the most important thing should be getting a good deal for working people through union work, not political point scoring. Let's unblur the lines, recognise all workers, and not risk profligate, unfunded commitments. I urge Council to support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. We have 4 members wishing to speak. Please, Councillor Gray, followed by Councillor Taylor, Councillor Frew, then Councillor Shackwell.
Lord Mayor, may I start by sending my best wishes and solidarity with the 500,000 workers that are on strike today. I am myself proudly a trade unionist, a member of GMB Union, and represent young workers on the General Council of the Trade Union Congress. Over the last few years, it has been shown that hard work and good intentions of working people are holding together our country, it seems. Sunak himself stood on the steps of Downing Street and clapped for carers. He must have a short-term memory, because now he'll be sacking those very same carers. Rather than give key workers the pay rise they deserve, they'll be getting a P45. Lord Mayor, workers shouldn't have to rely on food banks. The government should be focused on getting money into people's pockets and rebuilding our country and our public services. The Sack the Nurses Bill, as it's been coined, will forever be included in the shameful history of oppression of workers' fundamental human rights to be a member of a trade union, to strike and to assembly in this country. This bill will be in the company of the deportation of the Tolpuddle martyrs, 6 agricultural workers who, in 1834, were convicted of swearing a secret oath as members of the Friendly Society of Agricultural Labourers and sentenced to penal transport to Australia. In the 1972 imprisonment of the Pentonville Five, 5 shop stewards who were arrested for picketing docks and imprisoned by the Tory Institute Court that was acting outside of its powers. The trade union ban at the government communication headquarters in Cheltenham between 1984 and 1997, the second longest dispute in British trade union history. The ban was enforced by the Tory government of the day, who gladly went along with the assertion of American spy chiefs that trade union membership at GCHQ was a threat to national security. GCHQ's staff were forced to give up their union card or face a sack, which is what happened to 14 trade unions that refused to leave their union. I'm not speaking about these historic injustices to give you simply a history lesson or to reminisce of a time before I was even born, but to demonstrate the power of working people in this country. The Tolpuddle martyrs had their convictions overturned after popular protest and the collection of 800,000 signatures for their release. The Pentonville Five were carried from prison on the shoulders of their supporters after 6 days, when 250,000 workers walked out in solidarity strikes, including Fleet Street printers, miners and workers in construction, transport, factories, post offices and other public and private sectors, and the TUC having called for a one-day general strike. After 13 long years of court cases, campaigning, protest and public support, one of the 97 Labour government's first acts in office was to overturn the ban, and trade union membership was restored at GCHQ. The sacked trade unionists given back their jobs and a dark stain on the democratic society removed. But I don't want to see any nurses, teachers, train drivers, ambulance workers have to go through that same fight. Those struggles for democracy should be a warning from the past, not comment on a contemporary issue. It's not too late for the Tories to change tact and abandon this damaging bill and to back our key workers, give them the pay rise they deserve and properly fund our public services. But if they don't, working people, organised through our trade unions, will be there to see that no worker is sacked because of this draconian bill. Lord Mayor, let me finish by saying, let's not send this country back to the 1830s. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Taylor, followed by Councillor Frew.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I was also very pleased to join in the march this morning. It was really exciting to see so many people who'd come out to support our workers. In particular, my concern is over the NHS. I worked in the NHS all my working life, and to see doctors, nurses, midwives, ambulance drivers considering strike action is just too painful. It shouldn't be that way. Everything they did during the pandemic, everything they struggled to do, working hours, way beyond what they needed to, doing jobs they'd never done before, and it's just all been thrown away. All they want is a chance to live a reasonable life with a reasonable wage and have their conditions improved. Is that really too much to ask? And there were also this morning people from my local school, teachers who, again, struggled through the pandemic to provide education for our children under very difficult circumstances. And I was very pleased to be there to support them as well. But what really gets me is this appalling bill from the government. This is a bill that tells people that they have to provide a minimum service. It is a total insult to those nurses, ambulance drivers, fire workers, etc., who have always provided a decent level of cover during strikes and always will. And they tell us, in fact, that they can't now provide a decent service in normal times because of the cuts, because of the lack of staff, and because the difficulties they have at work. So this is an absolutely appalling bill, and we do need to get rid of it. So we on this side are very happy to support the motion, but I do urge people to support the amendment. I think the line that I was particularly concerned about in the original motion is at the end adding on action from the government alongside sustained investment across the public sector to reverse 12 years of central government imposed cuts. Well, I'm sorry, but I can't see any chance of a Labour government actually committing to totally reverse 12 years of cuts. If you think they will, I think you're misguided.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Frew. Councillor Frew.
Yes, Lord Mayor, thank you. Another one who was on the rally today, and solidarity to all those who were there. It was excellent to see so many young people also taking industrial action, although the context of that is the extreme hardship that they're facing in their lives, the burnout that they are facing in their professions, and that should not be the case. It's pushing young people away from important roles in society, like teachers, like nurses, and social care, where we need them very dearly. And also like to say that I enjoyed Councillor Taylor picking up the Socialist Appeal microphone. I wonder if she'll start selling the paper as well. The right to strike, as has been said, is absolutely fundamental to working people in our country. It underpins the living standards that we have strived for decades. It is not something that is taken lightly by unions, and the approach of the government over the past few months has just been insulting to people who have worked their entire lives for the benefit of their colleagues in their professions, something that I'd say semantically the Tories do that. They work for each other and their financial interests, but they don't do it for the general public. The rules that unions face are already stringent, and unions know that the best approach is usually restraint, and they have shown restraint for many years and secured as much as they can out of negotiations. However, in the face of double-digit inflation, where the government is not willing to budge from 3% or 5%, then that's the point where workers just simply can't afford to get on with their lives. And just to pick up the point about the difference between the private sector and the public sector, the point that we're trying to get to here today is about these minimum service standards, about the particular strikes that are going on today. But I will say that I'm a very proud GMB member who has seen my union working very hard to expand trade union membership across private sector into areas like the gig economy with Deliveroo, with Hermes and others, with very innovative bargaining agreements. Also, the first sex worker union in Scotland. I am incredibly proud of the work that my union does in the private sector. By the end of the day, what this is about is the government lumping the cost of their own economic failure on workers, especially in the public sector. If an economy cannot deliver better public services and real pay increases, who is it serving? I think the answer for the past 13 years has been Tory donors. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Frew. Councillor Shotwell. Yes.
Can I move standing order 19B being suspended so that we can actually get the business we were supposed to do out tonight?
You can.
Lord Mayor, I informed my mum last night that I was going to be home for tea. I don't intend to do the same tonight.
So we're going to go to the vote.
Is it seconded?
Is it seconded, Tom? Councillor Woodard. Oh, seconded twice. Thank you.
Is it agreed?
Is it agreed, or do we need a vote? Vote.
Go to the vote.
Well, we'll have to go to the vote. Oh. All right, now. Do I have to put you on the naughty step? Now, come on, behave. Right, so those who haven't been able to cast the vote, Councillor Higgins. I'm saying you haven't been able to cast your vote unless you're just waving. Was it? Okay. So, how would you like to vote? No? Councillor Wright? No? Everybody on the Councillor Story? No? Ooh, Councillor Byrne, I can just see your arm coming up. No? Is that everybody on that side? On this side? Everybody's managed to vote? Really? Wow. Oh, it's because Councillor Ashby's gone. Right, okay, so the noes get it. So what we'll have to do is just finish this agenda item. So, Councillor Shotwell.
I'm here.
You have the right to speak, and then we'll call to Councillor Kilgour.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Solidarity with all striking workers today on this National Day of Action. Solidarity with the train and bus drivers, school teachers, university staff and civil servants striking today. Solidarity with their trade unions, PCS, NEU, UCU, ASLEF and RMT, and of course with the TUC who coordinated today's rally at Monument that so many of us attended. And let's not forget all the public sector workers and their unions staging further strikes this month and the biggest ever NHS Day of Action next Monday. Workers aren't only striking about pay terms and conditions today, but about the fundamental right to strike. As the motion states, the Council believes that the right to collectively organise and withdraw one's labour is a fundamental human right. Today has been about defending that right to strike. Over the past 40 years, as many colleagues have said, our collective and industrial rights have been eradicated by successive Tory governments continuing what Thatcher started, which was a brutal attack on trade union power. No one ever wants to go on strike, but legally preventing the right to do so is an attack by this government on the entire trade union movement and all working people. The Strikes, Minimum Service Levels Bill or anti-strike law could sack workers for going on strike. When workers democratically vote to strike, they could be conscripted and forced to work and sacked if they don't. And trade unions could be sued if they don't provide the minimum levels of service under the proposed laws. This is morally, politically and legally wrong. It's an affront to democracy, human rights and in clear violation of International Labour Organisation standards. The bill removes the requirement that minimum service levels should be negotiated by trade unions and employers, instead delegating unlimited powers to the Business Secretary to set out all relevant law in regulations, draft regulations that Parliament isn't permitted to amend and subject to minimal scrutiny, and likely to result in minimum service levels being set at such a high level to make any strike in the future ineffective. This bill is nothing more than a direct attack on the very frontline services we applauded during COVID, with these workers now being offered below inflation pay rises and the denial of one of their human rights. Lord Mayor, we've already seen this government make new laws to limit the right to vote, protest and assemble. It's now attacking working class resistance to the cost of living crisis that this government has created. Today, on this National Day of Action, this chamber stands in solidarity with all workers and in strong opposition to the government's anti-strike bill. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shackwell. Councillor Kilgour.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to colleagues for taking part in what has been an excellent debate. I think there's been some really fantastic points made. I think what we can safely say is this chamber, certainly on our side, but I do believe across the chamber, stands in solidarity with all of our trade union colleagues, whichever sector they work in, and I'm very proud of that fact. I cannot accept the amendment, I'm afraid, so I urge Council to support the original motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kilgour. So the amendment is not agreed? No, there has to be a vote on it. Sorry? Yeah. So we need a vote. On the amendment. On the amendment. So vote on the amendment. Lovely Linda on the laptop. Right, and you, Councillor Keating, how are you voting? For the amendment? Councillor Story? No. Councillor Higgins? No. Councillor Wright? No. Councillor Byrne? No. Is that everybody? Oh, hello, Councillor Smith. Yes. Right, I'm afraid the amendment fails. We need to vote for the original motion.
Or is it agreed?
Or is it just agreed? Is it agreed or do we need a vote? Agreed, okay. Thank you, thank you.
The next one is...
Right, so what we're going to have to do now, we'll have to deal with these...
So we changed the orders.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter whether we change the orders or not, because we're not going to do it ours, so... We'll just whiz through. I'm not preempting, but... So, under Standing Order number 19, I'll go through each motion and ask the mover what they would like to do, whether they would like to deal with it tonight or defer. So, agenda item number 14, Councillor Taylor, voter ID in local elections. Would you like to deal? Yes. Yes, okay. So, we need a seconder. Yep, seconded. Is there no amendment? No? Is that agreed? Agreed, thank you. Agenda item number 16, Northumbria Police and Crime Commissioner's budget proposals. Councillor Ferguson, would you like to deal or defer? Deal, thank you. And that's to be seconded by Councillor Stone? Seconded. Do we have an amendment for this one?
Yes, Councillor
We do. Councillor Story. Move your amendment, or yeah, and seconded by. And is the amendment agreed? So we need a vote. Right. Same again. Councillor Higgins. You're a yes, are you? Councillor Wright. Yes. Councillor Story? Councillor Byrne? Yes. And Councillor Keating? No.
So the amendments,
That's everybody?
the amendment's carried.
The amendment is carried.
Is it agreed as amended?
Is it agreed as amended? No.
Do you need another vote?
So we need another vote. Yeah. So, everybody voted. Councillor Higgins? Yes. Councillor Wright? Councillor Story? Councillor Byrne? Councillor Keating? No. Okay, forgot that. Yeah. The motion as amended, it is a motion. The motion as amended is agreed. Right, the next one. Newcastle's role in the regional economic strategy. Councillor defers. Great, thank you, Councillor Stone. Number 18, attacks on emergency workers. Councillor Greenhough. Move without, right, okay, so we'll still have to go through the... So, seconded, Councillor Kemp. The amendment, Councillor Smith. Are you moving it? Is it? All right, okay, well, Councillor Mitchell. Move it, seconded by Councillor Hunter. Is the amendment agreed? Do we need a vote? Oh, it's like Groundhog Day, isn't it? Okay, we'll start at this side this time. Councillor Keating? Yes. Councillor Byrne? Councillor Higgins? Councillor Story? Councillor Wright? Oh, you're back on, are you? Oh, well done. Right. Were you waving, Tom, or excuse me? Right. So I've lost my track now. The amendment is rejected. The original motion, is it agreed? Right, okay, next one. Oh, number 19, LGBTQ plus History Month. I will call upon Councillor Hay. Oh, sorry, I'll ask Councillor Hay, would you like to move or defer? Tonight. So, Councillor Hay, you're moving it, seconded by Councillor Prestwell. No amendments? No amendments, great. Is the... all right, careful. Is the amendment agreed? I mean, is the movement... Oh, come on, Tom, honest to God. Stop it, stop winding this up. Is the motion agreed? Yay. Is that it? Well, close of meeting. Right, the next meeting is 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 1st of March, and as this determines the council tax budget, I may remind members that it will go on till 9 p.m. without a need to go through that. without a need to go through all the rigmarole. So prepare for 9 o'clock. Councillor Gray, tell your mum you won't be home for tea. Right.